Jake Morgan had been living alone in the northern mountains for 3 years since leaving the service, and he liked it that way because the quiet helped him forget the war and the sounds that still woke him at night. But tonight was different because tonight the sky was burning with colors he had never seen before, and something was falling fast toward the frozen lake behind his cabin. He grabbed his coat and rifle out of habit, even though he told himself he was done with fighting, and ran through the snow following the trail of purple fire that cut across the stars until he reached the crash site, where metal that looked like liquid silver was scattered across the ice, and in the center of it all were 8 figures that did not look human at all. They were tall and blue with skin that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness, and their eyes were too large and shaped like teardrops, and they moved with grace even though he could see they were hurt badly with dark blood freezing on the ice beneath them, and they had weapons in their hands, but they were not pointing them at him because they were pointing them outward at the tree line as if waiting for something terrible to come. One in front turned to look at him and spoke in a voice that somehow appeared inside his mind without using sound, and she said her name was Kira, and that they were warriors fleeing from hunters who wanted to capture them because their people had lost a war, and now they were being sold as prizes to the victors, and the 8 of them had stolen a ship to escape, but the ship was damaged and they crashed here on this world called Earth. Jake looked at them and saw soldiers just like he had been, and he knew that look in their eyes because he had seen it in the mirror after his own squad was wiped out in the canyon on Proxima, and he made a decision right there without thinking too hard about it, because thinking too hard never helped when someone needed help right now. He told them to follow him and led them back to his cabin, which was small and simple, but it had heat and walls, and that was more than they had out on the ice, where the temperature was dropping fast enough to kill even beings from another world. And once they were inside, he could see their wounds better, and they were bad with burns and deep cuts that went down to something that might have been bone. Kira explained through that strange mind voice that their hunters would arrive soon because they could track the ship, and there would be many of them, and they were strong and cruel, and the 8 of them were too injured to fight properly, but they would fight anyway because capture meant something worse than death, and Jake understood that too because he had seen what happened to prisoners during the war. He looked at his rifle and then at the 8 alien women who stood ready to die fighting in his cabin, and he felt something wake up inside him that had been sleeping for 3 years, and maybe this was why he came to the mountains in the first place, not to hide, but to wait for a reason to matter again. Jake started moving fast and pulled out the weapons he kept hidden under the floorboards, because a Marine never really retires, he just waits, and there were guns and explosives and traps left over from his time in special operations, and he started teaching the aliens how to use Earth weapons because their own were almost out of power. Kira was the leader, and she learned fastest. With her second in command, Lisa, who had silver markings on her face, and there was Beth, who was the smallest but moved like lightning, and Amy, who was injured worse but refused to sit down, and there was Katie and Megan and Nicole and Rachel, and all of them looked at him with something like hope mixed with determination, showed them how to set traps in the snow and how to use the terrain, and how humans fought when they were outnumbered, because humans were always outnumbered in the war. But humans were also too stubborn to know when they should lose, and that made them dangerous. Hunters arrived 3 hours later with ships that were bigger and better than the stolen one, and they came in fast, expecting to find 8 wounded prey waiting to be collected, but instead they found a mountain that had been turned into a killing ground by someone who knew how to make every rock and tree into a weapon. The first ship went down when it triggered the mine Jake had buried in the clearing, and the explosion lit up the night, and the aliens inside barely had time to realize they were under attack before the second ship took fire from 8 different positions where the women were hidden with human rifles that hit hard and fast. Jake fought alongside them, and he felt alive in a way he had not felt since the war ended, and Kira fought beside him, and he could feel her presence in his mind. Now not with words, but with something deeper like trust or maybe respect, and together they moved through the battle like they had trained together for years instead of hours. The hunters were strong and they had better armor and better weapons, but they were not ready for the fury of 8 alien warriors who refused to be captured, and they were definitely not ready for one human marine who decided that his cabin and his mountain and these 8 strangers were worth protecting, because that is what Marines do when the sun came up. The hunters were gone, either dead or retreating, and Jake stood in the snow with Kira and her squad, and they were all alive, even Amy, who had been hurt worst, and Kira looked at him and asked through that mind voice why he would risk his life for strangers from another world. Jake thought about it and realized he did not have a complicated answer, so he just told her the truth, which was that he saw soldiers who needed help, and he was a soldier who could help, and that was enough of a reason for him. And maybe that was the only reason that ever really mattered. Kira smiled then, and it was the first time he saw any of them smile, and she said that her people had stories about humans now after the war, because humans had fought beside them against the same enemy, and those stories said humans were crazy and dangerous and loyal beyond reason, and she was starting to believe those stories were true. Jake helped them repair their ship enough to fly again, and before they left, Kira gave him something that looked like a small crystal, and she said it was a beacon, and if he ever needed help, or if he ever wanted to leave this mountain, he could activate it, and they would come for him. Because he was Pac now, and Pac meant something to her people that went deeper than friendship or debt. They left as the sun set, and Jake watched their ship disappear into the stars, and then he walked back to his cabin, which had bullet holes in the walls now and blood on the floor, and he smiled because for the first time in 3 years he felt like he had done something that mattered, and maybe that was all a Marine really needed.